to my daughter, who finally found a man desperate enough. My father said that, glass raised, smile wide, 60 guests staring. At my own engagement party, the room went dead silent. Not the polite kind. The kind where you can hear someone's breath catch 3 tables away. My fiancé's hand clenched under the tablecloth. I felt his body start to rise, but I held his arm, held it firm. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked to the front of that room, opened my laptop, and projected one single document onto the screen. My father's business partner of 15 years dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor. And that was the sound of my father's entire life falling apart. But this story doesn't start at the party. It starts 3 months earlier, the night I found something in my father's books that I was never supposed to see. I'm Danielle Upton, 29 years old, and I'm a forensic accountant. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story genuinely speaks to you. Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, let me take you back to last October, the night my father called me a charity case for the last time. My father, Richard Upton, built his construction company from nothing. Literally nothing. A pickup truck, a handshake loan, and 17-hour days. By the time I was born, Upton and Marsh Construction had 12 employees, a fleet of trucks, and a reputation in our town that made people stand a little straighter when my father walked into a room. I grew up watching people admire him. The neighborhood barbecue host, the church fundraiser chair, the guy who bought a round for everyone at the country club bar and never let you forget it. At home, though, things ran on different rules. My father didn't hit. He didn't need to. He had a voice that could make you feel 6 inches tall without ever raising it above conversational volume. I was 9 the first time I remember clearly, 4th grade. I brought home a report card, straight A's, teacher's note saying I was a joy to have in class. I set it on the kitchen counter like I was presenting evidence in my own defense. He barely looked at it. Good grades don't mean you're smart, Danielle. Teachers hand those out when they feel sorry for a kid. My mother, Linda, was sitting right there. She sipped her coffee, said nothing. That was the system. He cut. She watched. I bled quietly. But here's what made it so confusing. And this is the part people don't understand about growing up like this. My father wasn't cruel every day. When I was 12, he taught me to ride a bike in the driveway, and when I finally made it to the end of the street without falling, he said, "That's my girl." I held on to those 4 words for years, replayed them when things got bad. It wasn't until much later that I realized he'd said it in front of the Marshes, who were over for dinner. I was performing well. He was taking credit. That's the only version of pride my father ever had, the kind with an audience. The pattern didn't change as I got older. It just got more sophisticated. College graduation. I finished magna cum laude, accounting, minor in criminal justice. I'd worked 2 jobs to keep my GPA where it was. My hands were shaking when I walked across that stage. My parents came. My father wore his best suit. And at the dinner afterward, a steakhouse I couldn't afford which he chose, he spent 45 minutes telling my college friends about his company's latest municipal contract. 45 minutes. My friends kept glancing at me. I kept smiling. When the check came, he said, loudly enough for the table, "Well, Danielle, let's hope that diploma's worth more than the paper it's printed on." Everyone laughed, because that's what you do when Richard Upton makes a joke. You laugh. A year later, I landed my first real position at a forensic accounting firm. Good firm, competitive hire. I called my parents to share the news. My mother said congratulations. My father got on the line and said, "Let's hope you don't bankrupt them." I laughed. I said, "Thanks, Dad." I hung up. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes. You know what the worst part is? I thought that was normal. When cruelty is the water you swim in, you don't know you're drowning. You think that's just how the current moves. It wasn't until Nathan that someone finally held up a mirror. He said it on our 3rd date, after I told a funny story about my father making a speech at my cousin's wedding, where he joked that I was next, if anyone would have her. Nathan didn't laugh. He set his fork down and looked at me. "Danielle, that's not normal. You know that, right?" I didn't answer. But something cracked open that night. Something small. Something that would eventually change everything. I met Nathan Cole at a joint conference for attorneys and forensic accountants in Baltimore. He was presenting on financial fraud litigation. I was taking notes 3 rows back. He wasn't flashy. He didn't command a room the way my father did. Nathan was the kind of man who listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, every word landed exactly where it was supposed to. Steady, grounded. The opposite of everything I'd grown up around. We dated for 14 months before I brought him home to meet my parents. I should have known how it would go. My father opened the door, shook Nathan's hand, and within 3 minutes had turned the living room into an interview. Where did Nathan go to school? What was his salary range? Did he come from money? Nathan answered everything calmly. No defensiveness, no posturing, just honest, direct answers. Then my father leaned back in his chair and said, "I hope you're patient, son. My daughter is the kind who needs to be led." The room went quiet. My mother looked at her hands. I opened my mouth to say something, I don't even know what, but Nathan got there first. "With all due respect, sir, Danielle is the most capable person I've ever met. No heat, no aggression, just a fact, delivered like he was reading it off a page." My father didn't respond. He just stared at Nathan for a long 3 seconds, then changed the subject to football. But I saw it. The micro shift in his jaw, the flicker behind his eyes. Nathan wasn't afraid of him. And that, I realize now, was the beginning of the end. Because my father's entire system depended on everyone in the room being just a little bit afraid. And Nathan simply wasn't. The man I loved had just become my father's newest problem. Nathan proposed on a Sunday morning. No ring in a champagne glass, no skywriting. He made me coffee, sat across from me at our kitchen table, and said, "I want the rest of my life to look exactly like this. Will you marry me?" I said yes before he finished the sentence. We wanted something small for the engagement party. 15, maybe 20 people. Our friends, a backyard, some wine. Simple. My father had other plans. He called 2 days after the proposal. "I'm handling the party, Danielle. I've already booked the Whitfield." The Whitfield, a venue he used for his corporate events. Valet parking, marble floors, projector screens, and surround sound for presentations. "Dad, we don't need all that. Nathan and I were thinking something casual." "Casual?" He laughed. "My daughter's engagement, and you want hot dogs in the backyard? I'm paying for it. Let me do this." I looked at Nathan. He shook his head slowly. Then my mother called. Her voice had that practiced softness she used when she wanted me to fold. "Just let him have this, Danielle. He's your father. He's trying to do something nice." So I folded, the way I always folded, the way she taught me to fold. Within a week, the guest list ballooned to 60. I scrolled through the names on my phone. His country club friends, his business contacts, his golf partners, people whose last names I recognized from his company's holiday card list. My friends? 8, total. This wasn't my engagement party. It was his stage, and I'd handed him the microphone without a fight. I didn't know yet that he'd been writing his toast for a week, and that what he'd written wasn't a blessing, it was a weapon. The night before the party, Nathan and I were lying in bed, lights off, both staring at the ceiling. "This is your party," he said quietly, "not his. You can still change the plan. If I fight him now, he'll make the next 6 months a nightmare. You don't know him when he's angry, Nathan. Let's just get through the night." Nathan was quiet for a long time. Then he rolled over to face me. "Okay, but I need you to hear something. I'm not marrying your father. I'm marrying you. And at some point, you're going to have to decide where the line is." He kissed my forehead and turned out the lamp. I lay there in the dark, thinking. There's a story my mother told me once when I was 16. Just the 2 of us, cleaning up after Thanksgiving. She said that early in her marriage, maybe year 2 or 3, she'd pushed back against my father about something. She wouldn't say what. He responded by canceling her credit card. Not temporarily, permanently. She had to ask him for grocery money for the next 8 months until he decided she'd learned her lesson. She told me this while drying a plate, smiling, like it was a funny anecdote about the weather. She never pushed back again. Not once. Not in 30 years. That night, lying next to Nathan, I finally understood what that story really was. It wasn't a memory, it was a warning. My mother was showing me the price of silence and the cost of speaking up. I looked at the ceiling and thought, If I don't draw the line now, I will become her. Smiling through the pain, drying plates, telling my own daughter the same story someday, like it was just something that happened. I couldn't sleep after that. The next evening, Friday, the night before the party, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off the seating chart. My father was in his study, door open, reading glasses on, writing something on a yellow legal pad. "Dad, what are you writing?" He didn't look up. "My toast. Don't worry about it." "Can I read it?" Now he looked up, smiled. The kind of smile that never reached past his mouth. "You'll hear it tomorrow, along with everyone else." Something cold moved through my chest. "Dad, it's my engagement party. I think I have a right to—" "Danielle." His voice dropped half a register, the warning tone, the one that meant, stop talking. "Trust me, sweetheart. Everyone will remember this toast." My mother appeared in the doorway, holding a mug of tea. She read the room in half a second, she was always good at that, and steered the conversation sideways. "Your father always gives wonderful speeches, honey. Remember Uncle Joe's retirement?" I remembered. Uncle Joe's retirement dinner. 4 years ago. My father stood up in front of 40 people and joked that Joe was retiring because no one needed him anymore, not even his wife. Joe laughed. Everyone laughed. Joe's wife didn't. That was my father's gift. He could gut you in public and make it sound like affection. I left the study without another word, grabbed my laptop bag from the car. I had a client audit deadline Monday morning and needed to finalize files over the weekend. The bag went in the trunk. "Bring the laptop to the party," Nathan had said earlier. "You can work during setup. Send the file before dinner." A practical suggestion, nothing more. That laptop would end up being the most important thing I brought to that party. But neither of us knew that yet. Saturday morning, the day of the party. I was drinking coffee and reviewing seating assignments when the event coordinator emailed the final guest list. Richard had made last-minute additions. I opened the attachment. 62 names. I started counting. His golf foursome. The Hendersons from the country club. 2 couples from his Rotary chapter. The Warrens, his insurance broker and wife. A contractor he'd known for 6 months. 6 months, and the man was invited to my engagement party. Gerald and Patricia Marsh. Table 1. Front and center, right next to family. My college friends, my co-workers, I found them. Table 8, by the kitchen. I called my father. "Dad, where are my people? Emily, Jazz, the group from work, they're at the back table." "There wasn't room up front, Danielle. I had to prioritize." "Prioritize who? Your golf buddies?" His voice sharpened. "This is a networking opportunity, not a slumber party. Don't be selfish." I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from anger, from the old, familiar helplessness of being rearranged by someone who thinks they own every room they walk into. Nathan was watching from across the kitchen. He hadn't said a word during the call, but his jaw was tight. "He invited Gerald to sit at table 1, I said. "Front row, right next to us." Nathan leaned against the counter. "You know why, right?" I looked at him. "He's performing," Nathan said. "For Gerald. For all of them. The loving father, the happy family. He's putting us on display like a window display for his business partners." I stared at the guest list on my screen. 62 names, and I was a prop at my own party. I closed the laptop, got dressed, and drove to the venue to watch my father's show. I arrived at the Whitfield an hour early to help with setup. The venue was exactly the kind of place my father loved. Exposed brick, brass fixtures, long mahogany bar. A projector screen at the far end, already rigged for the slideshow my father had curated of family photos. Photos he chose, moments he approved of. I was adjusting centerpieces at table 3 when I heard his voice. It came from the hallway near the coat check. My father and Gerald Marsh standing close, drinks already in hand. I was around the corner. They didn't see me. "I tell you, Gerald, I'm so proud of my little girl." My father's voice, warm, expansive, the voice he used in public. "She's everything I raised her to be." Gerald laughed. "You've done a hell of a job, Rich. Not every father stays this involved. Family first. That's always been my motto." I stood there behind the wall, centerpiece still in my hand. The word echoed. Proud. My father had just said he was proud of me. He had never, not once, said that word to my face. Not at graduation. Not when I passed my CPA. Not when I earned my CFE certification. Not even once in 29 years. But here, in a hallway, to the man whose money he was stealing. That's where the word lived. It was currency, spent where it would buy him something. I set the centerpiece down and walked away. Quietly. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I just filed it where I file everything my father gives me, in the place where pain sits so long it starts to feel like furniture. What I didn't know yet was this. Gerald Marsh, the man standing there calling my father a great dad, had been quietly losing hundreds of thousands of dollars to the man he was toasting. And I had the proof on my laptop in the trunk of my car. Let me back up. 3 months before the party. I was working late at my firm, deep in a forensic audit for a commercial client, a mid-sized real estate developer flagged for irregular disbursements. Tedious work. Spreadsheets and wire transfers and shell companies layered like Russian dolls. I was tracing a chain of payments through a limited liability company, registered in Delaware, as they always are, when something snagged. The LLC had no website, no employees on record, no public filings beyond the bare minimum. But the wire transfers flowing through it were substantial, consistent, monthly. I kept pulling the thread. The LLC was linked to a holding company. The holding company shared a registered agent with another entity. And that entity, buried 3 layers down, behind enough paperwork to make your eyes bleed, connected back to a name I recognized. Upton and Marsh Construction, LLC, my father's company. I stared at the screen. My coffee went cold. The office was empty. Everyone had left hours ago. The cleaning crew was vacuuming down the hall. My training kicked in before my emotions could. Certified fraud examiners have an obligation. If we uncover evidence of financial fraud during the course of our work, we don't get to look away. It's not optional. It's the job. But this was my father. I saved the files, closed the laptop, drove home, sat in my car in the driveway for 10 minutes, engine off, hands on the wheel. Then I went inside, opened a new folder on my personal laptop, and named it Project Atlas. Over the next several weeks, I worked on it after hours, alone, tracing every transaction, documenting every discrepancy, building the kind of report I build for clients. Except this time, the subject was the man who raised me. I told no one, not yet. 2 weeks in, I told Nathan. Not because I wanted to, because I couldn't carry it alone anymore. I was waking up at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, running numbers in my head, second-guessing every entry in that folder. The auditor in me knew what the data showed. The daughter in me kept looking for another explanation. There wasn't one. I sat Nathan down at the kitchen table on a Tuesday night, showed him the summary. He read it slowly, the way lawyers read everything, once for content, once for implications. When he finished, he looked up. How much? Hard to say without full access, but based on what I can trace, significant. Over a decade. He set the papers down. What do you want to do with this? I don't know. He's my father. Nathan nodded. He didn't push, didn't lecture, didn't say what any reasonable person would have said, which is, your father is a thief. Instead, he leaned forward and said the thing that mattered most. He's also stealing from a man who trusts him. Gerald's been his partner for 15 years. I looked at the table, the grain in the wood, the ring stain from my coffee mug. Whatever you decide, Nathan said. I'm with you. But don't sit on this too long. Gerald deserves to know. I agreed. My plan was clear. Finish the audit, compile the full report, get through the engagement party. Then, Monday morning, I'd send the report directly to Gerald, face to face if possible. Clean, professional. No drama, no scene. Just the truth. Delivered the way I'd deliver it to any client. Bring the laptop to the party, Nathan said a few days later. You've got that Monday deadline anyway. It was a practical suggestion, reasonable, the kind of thing that made complete sense at the time. My father, of course, had his own plans for that evening, and they changed mine entirely. Saturday evening, 6:30. The Whitfield looked like a magazine spread. Candles on every table, white orchid arrangements, a string quartet in the corner playing something soft and classical that I couldn't name. My father had outdone himself. That was the thing about Richard Upton. When he performed flawlessly. Nathan and I arrived together. I was wearing a cream silk dress I'd bought specifically for tonight. Nathan was in a navy suit, his hand steady on the small of my back as we walked through the double doors. My father met us in the foyer. He was already working the room, champagne in hand, handshake ready. There she is. He opened his arms. There's my beautiful girl. He hugged me, held it for 3 full seconds. His cologne was sharp and expensive. My body went rigid. My father never called me beautiful. Not at prom, not at graduation, not in 29 years of living under his roof. But here, in front of the arriving guests, in front of Gerald and Patricia Marsh, who were handing their coats to the attendant, I was suddenly his beautiful girl. I hugged him back. Because what else do you do? Gerald shook my hand warmly. Congratulations, Danielle. Your father hasn't stopped talking about this party for weeks. Thank you, Mr. Marsh. I'm glad you're here. And I meant it, though not in the way he thought. Nathan squeezed my hand under the table once we sat down. I leaned into him and whispered, "He's performing." Nathan whispered back, "I know. Just breathe." I looked around the room. 60 faces, candles flickering, wine pouring. My father moving from table to table like a candidate working a rally, shaking hands, clapping shoulders, laughing the big laugh. This was his night. Not mine. Not yet. Dinner was served at 7:15. My father had arranged the seating so he was at the head of our table, table 1, with Gerald and Patricia to his right, my mother to his left, and Nathan and me across from them, like a tribunal. The food was excellent, the wine was expensive, and my father was in rare form. Somewhere between the salad course and the entree, he started telling stories. Not about Nathan and me, about me, the greatest hits of Danielle's failures, repackaged as comedy. Did I ever tell you about the time Danielle failed her driving test? 3 times. He held up 3 fingers. Laughter rippled down the table. And the cooking, oh God, the cooking. She nearly burned the kitchen down making scrambled eggs. Scrambled eggs! More laughter. Then he leaned in, conspiratorial, like he was sharing a secret. And her first boyfriend? What was his name? Danielle? Kevin? Kyle? He lasted about 4 months before he ran for the hills. The table laughed. My mother laughed. Even people who didn't know me laughed. Because my father had that gift. The gift of making cruelty sound like warmth. I smiled. The autopilot smile. The one I'd been practicing since I was 9. Nathan didn't smile. His hand found mine under the table and held it. Across the table, Patricia Marsh tilted her head slightly. She leaned toward my mother and said, softly, but not softly enough, "Richard's being a bit hard on her tonight, isn't he?" My mother's answer came instantly, reflexively, the way a trained response always does. "Oh, that's just how he shows love." Patricia looked at me. Our eyes met for half a second. She didn't say anything else. But I could see it. The recognition. The quiet alarm of a woman who knows exactly what she's watching. She told me later, "I knew right then. I just didn't know how bad it was about to get." 8:15. Dessert plates cleared. The string quartet paused. My father stood up. He buttoned his jacket, picked up a spoon, tapped it against his champagne glass 3 times. The room quieted in that practiced way. The way people quiet down for a man they've learned to listen to. I want to raise a glass to my daughter Danielle. I straightened in my chair. My heart did something stupid. It hoped. Even after everything, after 29 years of evidence, some broken part of me still leaned toward the light. Maybe this time. For 29 years, he said, scanning the room with that showman's gaze, I've watched this girl struggle. The word landed like a stone in water. With school, with work, with every relationship that didn't quite work out. My face went hot. I could feel 60 pairs of eyes shifting toward me. I'll be honest, there were times I wasn't sure anyone would stick around long enough to figure her out. A few uncomfortable laughs, glasses held midair. Then he raised his champagne flute, smiled his biggest smile, and delivered the line he'd been writing all week. So tonight, I want to toast to Danielle, who finally found a man desperate enough. He laughed. A big, generous Richard Upton laugh. No one joined him. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I've ever heard. 60 people, frozen, forks down, eyes wide. A woman at table 4 covered her mouth with her hand. Gerald Marsh stared at his plate. Patricia's hand went to her husband's arm. Nathan's whole body tensed beside me. I felt his weight shift. His chair started to move. I put my hand on his arm, firm, steady. "Don't," I whispered. "I've got this." The silence held. A few people at the far tables raised their glasses out of sheer discomfort. Muscle memory overriding judgment. Most didn't. Mark, Nathan's best man, set his glass down on the table deliberately, like he was making a statement. He shook his head once. Slow. Helen Cole, Nathan's mother, turned and looked directly at my mother. The look on her face wasn't anger. It was disbelief. Pure, undiluted disbelief. My mother looked away. My father stood there, glass still raised, reading the room. He was smart enough to feel the temperature drop. But Richard Upton had never once backed down from a room in his life, so he doubled down. "Oh, come on," he said, grinning wider. "It's a joke. Danielle knows I love her." He turned to me, eyes bright with that manufactured warmth. "Right, sweetheart?" 60 people looked at me. I looked at my father. 5 seconds passed. 5 seconds is a long time when no one is breathing. Then I said it. Quiet. Clear. 2 words. "Sit down, Dad." His grin faltered. Just a crack. "Danielle, don't be dramatic." I said sit down. My voice didn't rise. I didn't need it to. The room was so silent that a whisper would have carried to the back wall. My father stared at me. For one horrible, electric second, I thought he was going to argue. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked around, searching for an ally, a laugh, anyone, and found nothing. Just 60 faces watching him like witnesses. He sat down. It was the first time in my entire life that my father did what I told him to do. I pushed my chair back, stood up, smoothed the front of my dress, and walked, calm, steady, no rush, to the front of the room. I had a laptop in my bag, and a file that had been waiting for this moment without either of us knowing it. The walk from table 1 to the front of that room was maybe 30 feet. It felt like a mile. I could feel every set of eyes tracking me, the rustle of napkins, someone clearing their throat, a chair creaking as someone shifted to see better. My laptop bag was under the AV table near the projection screen. I'd stashed it there during setup, planning to send my Monday file during cocktail hour. I hadn't needed it then. I needed it now. I unzipped the bag, opened the laptop. My hands were steady. My heart was not. My father's voice came from behind me, sharp. "Danielle, what are you doing?" I didn't turn around. I plugged the HDMI cable into the projector port. The same projector my father had set up for his curated family slideshow. Photos of vacations he'd chosen, holidays he'd staged, a highlight reel of a family that didn't exist. The screen lit up. I opened the folder, Project Atlas. Then I turned to face the room. 60 people. My mother gripping her napkin. Nathan standing now 3 steps behind me. Gerald Marsh at table 1, his reading glasses still perched on his nose from reviewing the dessert menu. "My father just told 60 people that no man would willingly marry me," I said. My voice was even, professional, the same tone I use when I present findings to a client. "I think it's only fair that these same 60 people know who my father really is." I clicked the file open. The first page filled the screen. White background, black text, a header that read, "Forensic Audit Summary. Unauthorized Fund Transfers. Upton and Marsh Construction, LLC." Gerald Marsh's champagne glass began to tilt in his hand. I didn't give a speech. I didn't need to. "This is a forensic audit report I compiled over the past 3 months," I said. "It documents a pattern of unauthorized fund transfers from the company my father co-owns with Mr. Gerald Marsh." I scrolled to the summary page. 3 columns, dates, amounts, destination accounts, a decade of transactions laid out in the clean, clinical format I'd been trained to produce. The numbers spoke for themselves. My father shot to his feet. His chair scraped the marble floor with a sound that made 2 people flinch. "This is ridiculous." His voice was loud now, loud in a way it never was in public, the indoor voice cracking open to show what lived underneath. "You don't know what you're talking about." I turned and looked at him, directly. For the first time in 29 years, I looked at my father without flinching. "Dad, I'm a certified fraud examiner. This is literally what I do." The room didn't gasp. It was worse than that. It just absorbed. 60 people processing at once. I could see it moving across the tables like weather. The widened eyes, the hands reaching for phones, the couples leaning into each other to whisper. Then the sound, glass on marble, sharp, final. Gerald Marsh's champagne flute slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. The sound cracked through the silence like a gunshot. Patricia grabbed her husband's arm. Gerald! Gerald didn't look at her. He was staring at the screen. His face had gone gray. The kind of gray that comes when you're watching 15 years of trust dissolve in 15 seconds. Then he looked at my father, and the expression on Gerald Marsh's face, I'll never forget it. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was the look of a man discovering that his house has been on fire for years and no one told him. My father moved fast. He always did when the walls closed in. He stepped toward Gerald, both palms up, the peacemaker's pose. Gerald, listen to me. She's lying. She's angry. I made a joke she didn't like, and now she's making things up to humiliate me. Gerald raised one hand, didn't stand, didn't shout, just one hand, palm out, the way you stop traffic. Don't. One word, but his voice shook, and that single tremor carried more weight than anything my father had said all night. Gerald reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. Right there, at table 1, in front of every person in that room. His voice was low but clear enough for the tables nearby to hear. Ray, it's Gerald. I need you in the office Monday morning. First thing, it's about the partnership. He hung up. Set the phone on the table. Didn't look at my father again. Richard spun toward my mother. His composure was cracking now. Visibly, in real time, like ice under weight. Linda, tell them she's lost her mind. Tell them. My mother sat perfectly still. Her hands were folded on the table. Her eyes were on her plate. She said nothing. The same silence she'd given me for 29 years. She finally gave it to him. And for the first time, her silence wasn't protection. It was permission. Chairs began scraping. Guests at the far tables stood quietly, reaching for coats and purses. No dramatic exits. Just the slow, unmistakable withdrawal of people who no longer wanted to be in the room. Nathan stepped up beside me. He didn't say a word, just placed his hand gently between my shoulder blades. Then a voice came from table 2. Helen Cole, Nathan's mother, stood up. She walked over to me, took both my hands in hers and said, I'm proud of you, sweetheart. 4 words. The exact 4 words I'd been waiting to hear from my father my entire life. They came from someone else's mother, and that somehow made them mean even more. Gerald stood up slowly. He steadied himself with one hand on the table, not because he was weak, but because he was holding himself together. He walked to my father. The 2 men stood face to face in front of 60. No, maybe 50 now. Some had already slipped out. Witnesses. 15 years, Rich. Gerald's voice was quiet. Controlled. The voice of a man choosing his words because he knows a room full of people will remember every one of them. 15 years I trusted you. My father started talking fast. Gerald, let me explain. There's context here. The transfers were, it's a restructuring. My accountant advised, your accountant. Gerald almost laughed. Almost. Your daughter is a forensic accountant, Richard, and she just showed me what your accountant was hiding. My father opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Gerald adjusted his jacket, straightened his tie. Then he said, quietly and precisely, my lawyer will be in touch Monday morning. Don't call me. Don't come to the office. Don't contact me. He turned to Patricia. She was already standing, coat over her arm, ready. They'd been married 35 years. She knew when it was time to go. But Patricia stopped. She walked to me, took my hand and squeezed it. Thank you for telling the truth, Danielle. I know what it cost you. I nodded. My throat was too tight to speak. The Marshes walked out through the double doors. The room watched them go. No one tried to stop them. No one said goodbye to Richard. My father stood alone in the center of the room. The projector was still glowing behind him, casting the audit summary across his back like a shadow he couldn't shake. One by one, tables emptied, coats collected, cars started in the parking lot. Not a single person stopped to shake his hand on the way out. By 9 o'clock, the room was nearly empty. The string quartet had packed up 20 minutes ago. The waitstaff moved silently between tables, clearing plates from a dinner no one had finished. My mother sat at table 1. Same seat, same posture. She hadn't moved in 45 minutes. My father stood by the bar, jacket off, tie loose. He was holding a glass of whiskey he hadn't drunk. I closed my laptop, unplugged the HDMI cable, slid the laptop into my bag. My hands were trembling now, not during, but after. The adrenaline was leaving, and what it left behind was something heavier. I walked to the center of the room. My father looked at me. His eyes were red. I don't know if it was rage or something deeper. Maybe both. You just destroyed your own father, he said. I held his gaze. No, Dad, you destroyed yourself. I just stopped covering for you. Over a joke? You did this over a joke? This isn't about the toast, and you know it. He turned to my mother. Last card. Final play. Linda, you're going to let her do this to me? My mother looked up from the table, and for the first time, in 30 years of marriage, in a lifetime of practiced silence, she spoke. You did this, Richard, not her. 7 words, quiet, almost gentle, but they landed like a door closing. My father's face did something I'd never seen before. It crumbled. Not into tears, my father didn't cry, but into a kind of blankness. The look of a man who has run out of people to blame. I picked up my bag. Nathan was by the door holding my coat. Goodbye, Dad, I said. He didn't respond. I walked out of the Whitfield with my hand in Nathan's. The November air was sharp and clean. I breathed it in, deep, full, like I'd been underwater for 29 years and had just broken the surface. My hands were still shaking. This wasn't victory. This was grief wearing a different coat. But it was done. Monday came fast. Gerald's attorney, Raymond Stein, was in the Upton and Marsh office by 8 a.m. with a court order for a full forensic audit of the company's books, conducted by an independent third-party firm, not me. My report was the catalyst, but the process had to be clean. I understood that. I wanted that. By Tuesday, word had traveled the way it always does in small communities, through phone calls that start with, "Did you hear?" and end with, "I always thought something was off." Richard Upton was removed from the membership roster of the Ridgewood Country Club, not suspended. Removed. 22 years of dues, charity galas, and golf tournaments, gone in a single board vote. The man who'd bought rounds for the entire bar couldn't get past the front desk. By Wednesday, 3 of the business contacts who'd sat at his carefully arranged tables on Saturday night had quietly severed ties. No public statements, just unreturned phone calls, canceled lunches, the slow, deliberate erasure that happens when people decide you're no longer worth the association. The news didn't make the paper. It didn't need to. In a community that size, the party itself was the headline. 60 witnesses. That's 60 versions of the story, spreading outward like ripples. My father called me 11 times that week. I didn't pick up. Not once. The 12th call went to voicemail. I listened to it once. Danielle, you need to fix this. Call me back. Now. Still giving orders, even now. I deleted the voicemail and set my phone on the counter, screen down. Nathan was making dinner. He looked over at me but didn't ask who called. He didn't need to. The man who controlled every room he walked into couldn't get his own daughter to answer the phone. And for the first time in my life, that silence was mine to give, not his to take. The independent audit took 6 weeks. When the final report came in, it confirmed everything in my file. And then some. $837,000. That was the total. Siphoned through Shell LLCs over a 10-year period. Monthly transfers, small enough to avoid triggering automatic flags, large enough to fund a lifestyle that wasn't Richard Upton's to fund, the lake house, the boat, the country club membership he no longer had. Gerald filed a civil lawsuit in January, breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, conversion of partnership assets. His attorney told Nathan, off the record, attorney to attorney, that a criminal referral to the district attorney's office was under consideration. My father hired a defense lawyer, a good one. But good lawyers cost money, and my father's liquid assets were frozen pending the outcome of the civil case. He burned through his personal savings in the first 2 months. By March, Upton and Marsh construction was suspended, operations halted, contracts voided. The 12 employees my father used to brag about were collecting unemployment. Then the lake house went up for sale. I saw the listing online, the same house where my father hosted 4th of July barbecues, where he held court on the back deck with a beer in his hand, telling everyone within earshot how he'd built everything from nothing. Turns out, a lot of that everything belonged to Gerald. Nathan showed me the listing one evening. I looked at it for 10 seconds, then closed the tab. "You okay?" he asked. "I didn't do this to him," I said. "He did this to himself." Nathan nodded. "I know. But it still doesn't feel good. It's not supposed to." He was right. Justice isn't supposed to feel like celebration. It's supposed to feel like the weight of a door finally closing, heavy, final, and necessary. But the heaviest moment was still coming, and it arrived 2 weeks later, through a phone call I wasn't expecting. My mother called on a Sunday afternoon. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Maybe instinct, maybe hope, maybe just the fact that she'd never called me on a Sunday before. Sundays were Richard's day. Football and silence. Danielle. Her voice was different, smaller, but somehow clearer, like she'd finally taken something heavy off her chest. Hi, Mom. A long pause. I could hear her breathing. Then, I should have said something 30 years ago. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes, leaned against the kitchen counter, the words I'd waited my entire life to hear, and they came wrapped in 30 years of regret. I saw what he did to you, she continued, every time, and I told myself it was his way of caring. That's what I told myself, Danielle, because the alternative, admitting I'd let my daughter be hurt by her own father, was too much. Mom, let me finish, please. Her voice cracked. What you did at that party, standing up like that, I've never been that brave, not once in my life, and watching you, it broke something open in me. I didn't say, it's okay, because it wasn't. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. What I said was, I love you, Mom, but love isn't enough. Not anymore. I need you to show me. She was quiet then. I started seeing someone, a therapist. Last week was my first session. I pressed my hand to my mouth. My eyes burned. That's a good start, Mom. We talked for 20 more minutes. Carefully, the way you walk across thin ice, aware of every step, aware it could crack. But moving forward. 2 days later, I received a text from my father. Just one. The last communication I'd ever get from Richard Upton. You chose a stranger over your own blood. I read it twice. Then I understood. And it was the final confirmation I needed. Gerald Marsh, his partner of 15 years, his friend, the man whose money he stole. My father still called him a stranger. Richard Upton didn't know what trust was. He only understood control. And when control was gone, he had nothing left. I deleted the text, and I didn't look back. 6 months after the party, Nathan and I hosted our own celebration. Not at the Whitfield, not at any venue. In Nathan's parents' backyard, 15 people, string lights from the hardware store, burgers on the grill, a Bluetooth speaker playing a playlist Nathan and I had made together on a lazy Sunday morning. No projector, no slideshow, no seating chart. My friends, Emily, Jasmine, the crew from work, sat on lawn chairs and drank beer from cans. Nathan's mom, Helen, brought her famous lemon bars. Mark gave a toast that was 3 sentences long and made everyone laugh. Real laughter. The kind that comes from the belly, not from obligation. My mother came. She arrived early, carrying a dish she'd made herself, something she hadn't done in years, because my father always ordered catering. She was quieter than usual, careful with her words, but she was there, present, trying. My father was not invited. Halfway through the evening, the doorbell rang, a delivery. Flowers, a massive arrangement of white peonies, with a card. I opened it. To Danielle, the most honest person I've ever known. Congratulations. Gerald and Patricia Marsh. I stood in the doorway holding that card for a long time. Nathan came up behind me. You okay? Yeah, I said. I spent 29 years trying to earn one word from my father. And here's Gerald Marsh giving me something my dad never could. Nathan put his arm around me. Some people build, some people take. You can't change which one your father chose to be. I pressed my face into his shoulder, and I cried. The first time since the party. Real, messy, ugly tears. Not because I was sad exactly, but because something that had been locked tight for 29 years had finally opened, and everything inside needed somewhere to go. 15 people who actually wanted to be there. That's all I ever needed. People ask me if I regret it. The answer is complicated. I regret it every single day, but not for the reason you might think. I don't regret the truth. I don't regret standing up. I regret that my father put me in a position where I had to choose between loyalty and honesty. That choice should never have been mine to make. Let me be clear about something. I didn't project that document to get revenge. I didn't walk up there with a plan. My plan was Monday morning, clean, professional, private. But when my father stood in front of every person I loved and told them I was worthless, when he turned my engagement party into one last performance where he was the star and I was the punchline, something shifted. Not anger, something deeper. The realization that if I sat down and swallowed this, I would swallow everything. Forever. I was tired of swallowing. The truth is, I'd been silent about two things: how my father treated me, and what my father had done to Gerald. And in that moment, I understood that the silence was the same. The silence about the abuse and the silence about the fraud came from the same place: fear. Fear of losing a father who was never really mine to begin with. Silence isn't loyalty. Silence is complicity. I learned that at a dinner party while watching my mother fold her napkin and smile. If you're listening to this and something about it feels familiar, if you know what it's like to sit at a table and shrink yourself so someone else can feel big, I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's not my place. But I will tell you this. Setting a boundary with your family doesn't mean you don't love them. It means you love yourself enough to say, I won't accept this anymore. And sometimes that's the bravest sentence a person can speak. Here's where I am now. Nathan and I are getting married next month. Small ceremony, 30 guests, every single one of them chosen by us. No one volunteered to take over the planning. No one needed to. My mother is still in therapy. We talk once a week, sometimes twice. It's careful, those conversations, like learning to walk again after a long time in a wheelchair. She's not the mother I needed when I was 9, but she's trying to be the mother I need now, and I'm learning to let her. Gerald's civil case is moving through the courts. I don't follow the details. I gave my deposition last month. Professional, fact-based, no emotion. Just the numbers. The numbers are enough. Richard sold the lake house. I heard through a cousin that he's renting an apartment on the east side of town. Alone. Linda moved in with her sister in February. My father hasn't contacted me since that text message. I don't expect him to. The man who spent 29 years controlling every conversation finally ran into one he couldn't manage. I'm not a hero. I want you to know that. I'm not some warrior who planned the perfect takedown. I'm a woman who got pushed too far on the wrong night and happened to have the evidence to push back. That's the whole story. Some days I